Imagine a new kind of investing, a potentially life-changing way to invest that honors biblical principles, the kind of principles that you and I grew up with. Since 1994, Timothy Plan has made biblically responsible investing possible, offering mutual funds and ETFs that are filtered for biblical principles. Don't compromise your values. Invest with Timothy Plan. Ask your financial advisor or call Timothy Plan at 1-800-TIM-PLAN. Again, that's 1-800-846-7526 and discover what it means to be a biblically responsible investor. Investing involves risk, including possible loss of principal. Before investing, carefully consider a fund's investment objective, risks, charges, and expenses contained in the prospectus available at timothyplan.com. Read carefully before investing. Mutual funds distributed by Timothy Partners Ltd. and ETFs distributed by Foreside Fund Services LLC. As a paid testimonial, there is no guarantee of future performance and each experience will differ.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Fire! Pursuing truth. Torching idols, rebelling against the world. This is the HECKPHIRE Podcast.
Well, hello again. Welcome to the HECKPHIRE Podcast. Welcome to everybody listening in on whatever subscriber platform you use. And welcome to all of you watching, courtesy of our sponsor friends watching here on the youtube.com. Send it out via email. If you haven't subscribed to us over at Substack, make sure that you do that. Have I sent it out yet? I was going to send out an additional piece through Substack to our subscribers of a column I wrote relative to the Good Samaritan and all of that stuff. And I don't remember if I've done it yet. I think I did it. If I haven't, it's coming. Sometimes I set those things to send, and I don't remember exactly when I set it to send. I should have looked before I jumped on the podcast here. But anyway, welcome aboard, and it is inauguration week. It is the end now, the official end of the Biden administration, the beginning of the second Trump administration. Just the second time in American history this has happened, where a previous president has been reelected for a second term that is not continuous. It wasn't. They weren't connected. They weren't successive. That's the word I'm looking for. One of my most embarrassing moments as a teacher occurred because of the first time this happened with the Cleveland administration. Grover Cleveland had been president. Benjamin Harrison defeated him, and then Grover Cleveland ran against Benjamin Harrison and defeated him. Almost the same thing has happened this time with Trump being defeated by Biden and then Trump running against Biden. But then Biden dropped out. So it's not, he beat Harris. So it's not exactly the same thing. I think it would have been had Biden stayed in the race, although Joe Biden doesn't believe so. I'm not entirely sure that Joe Biden knows what he believes, and I'm not saying that as an insult. It comes across that way because you really can't address this. It should have never been an issue. It should have never been an issue because Joe Biden was never mentally fit for this office. And I understand where America was 4 years ago. It was anybody but Trump. It didn't matter. Just put somebody up there, even if it is that. A 50-year political animal. That's what Joe Biden was. He was the swampiest of the swamp. If you want to call everybody that's been in Washington, D.C. since they were fetuses, feti, if you will, if you want to call him a swamp creature, that's Joe Biden. He was a lifetime politician. And we thought, oh, yeah, he's an honorable guy. Let's put him in the presidency. And that's what we got. Not a good move. So where are we now at the start of the Trump second term? Well, I'd be lying if I didn't say I think there were some positive things that happened. I will also go so far as to say, okay, I wrote a piece about this at Not the Bee, and so some of this is going to be parallel to what I wrote over there. So if you subscribe to Not the Bee, if you read Not the Bee and you read this piece, you're going to see some parallel here. But it's one of those world events, the inauguration, nationally significant events that obviously I'm going to talk about in multiple forums. I did an interview about this on a different, it wasn't a podcast, but a different radio thing. And I'm going to I'm going to share my thoughts on this. So let me just start at the very beginning. The move to make it indoors. Okay, I read a couple different things about this. I read Trump's a sissy, he doesn't want to be outside. He's not in good health, so he's moved it indoors. That was a big conspiracy. One of my favorite conspiracy theories was, oh, well, there's something going on. There's all these dogs in D.C. right now, and they're sniffing for radioactive material. Something's up. All the conspiracy theorists that come out of the woodwork. And for some reason, if any of you use X, formerly Twitter, you have two different tabs. You've got the following tab, which is your feed, the people that you've chosen to follow, the accounts that you're following to get your news, to get your information, or to get thoughts and interact with. And then you have this other tab called For You. And sometimes, without provocation, without intentionally clicking on it, my For You tab will pop up. And I don't know how these algorithms work, because I don't click on pornographic stuff. I don't click on inappropriate stuff, but some of that stuff will start populating your feed. And so then you're sitting there and you're looking at it. I don't want to look at that stuff. And certainly if my children are around or my wife is around, I don't want that stuff coming up because I don't want them thinking that I'm looking at that stuff. They really got to get a handle on that. But anyway, or at least let there be, if you want to say, oh, it's free speech. Okay, but I also should be able to avoid those things that I don't want to see. Right? Like by not following them? So just let it default to my following page. The reason I'm saying all of this is because you start getting populated with some of these nutty conspiracy theorists out there. And the problem is the conspiracy theories entertain me too much. I think we talked about this on the Friday 5. If you're a paid subscriber, then you get the after hour section of this. It comes right after this, and it's an additional, it's like the second half of the podcast, but we just kind of take it easy and address some things, and I answer questions from the paid subscribers. And one of those questions was like my favorite conspiracy theory, and I talked about that and said, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I'm fascinated by them. Maybe that was the question. What conspiracy theory fascinates you the most? I think that's what it was. And they do. Like, I get into it. I find it fascinating that the human mind can convince itself of some of these things. Oh, we didn't really land on the moon. Like, people really believe that. A lot of people. And that the earth is flat. There are people who really believe that. And so some of these conspiracy theories out there. So anyway, the problem with clicking on that and following some of those things is then they do start to populate your feed. Anyway, the algorithm gets messed up. So let me get back to what I was getting at. I started seeing these conspiracy theories. We got all these radioactive sniffing dogs around DC. Something's going on. And I really wanted to respond, but I knew if I responded, I would bring in a bunch of riffraff into my feed commenting and harassing, and I didn't want to listen to that. And I was afraid if I respond, then I'm definitely going to get these things promoted to my feed. So I didn't, but I wanted to say, yeah, something's going on. A presidential inauguration where like the entire federal government, for the most part, is going to be there, except for like AOC. And we really don't want there to be a terror attack that destroys everyone in our government except AOC. That's not anything that we want. So I think the radioactive sniffing dogs, I think that's great. It does make me wonder how they train radioactive sniffing dogs. Because it would seem as though if you're training a dog to sniff out radioactive material, they must be exposed to what that would be like, but wouldn't that kill them? Something's going on there. But so I'm reading all of this stuff about why he's moved the inauguration inside. And it wasn't his choice. It was they had to move it in for security's sake because there's multiple active threats against the president-elect, which, you know, is believable after everything that he went through in the campaign. Okay, so here's my take. I think this was done at Trump's request. And I cannot prove this to be true. And nobody who ever... If there would only be a handful of people that would know that this is why, and they would never admit it. Only Trump would admit it himself later on. I could see him doing that. But here's what I think it is. This is my theory. I think that President Trump wanted the inaugural moved inside because he wanted all of the distractions of being outdoors eliminated. If you've ever done anything, like if you've given a speech, inside versus outside, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You cannot hold the attention of people outside like you can inside. Just can't be done. Revival meetings that happen outside, preachers, they struggle to hold attention outside. Even the ones that are really attention grabbing. It is very difficult outdoors. There's too much else going on, and the sound gets sucked out. The acoustics are terrible. And so it is a totally different environment when you are outdoors. And I think that he wanted all distractions eliminated so that every word could be heard. And here's the kicker. I think he wanted to spike the football. 100%, I think that's what he wanted. To take the football and spike it on the battered corpse of his vanquished political enemies. The people that for the last 4 years have put him through a lot of stuff. And by the way, I'm not here to litigate whether he brought that on himself or not. You know my feelings that Trump brings a lot of stuff on himself that he doesn't need to. And that some of the pursuit and the legal stuff that's his own fault for doing things that he shouldn't have done. Even if it doesn't amount or rise to the level of what they were trying to do to him, that may be the case, but you don't give your enemies that kind of an option. But he did. But I don't want to litigate whether or not he should have gone through all that. The fact is that he did. And I think he wanted it inside so that he could sit his political enemies down, whether it's Barack Obama, whether it's the Clintons, whether it's Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, the whole lot of them, and they could sit down. He's not feeling magnanimous towards them. You remember back in 2017 that in the campaign, Trump said the whole locker up stuff. And Trump said once he was elected that the Clintons are good people and they've been through a lot, and he hopes that he's not going to pursue any of that stuff. He lets her up off the mat really easy. And then in 2020, he saw the way they play ball. And they do not let people up off the mat very easy. And so I think he wanted the Bidens and the Obamas, the entire progressive governing cabal. I think he wanted them there so he could dress them down and humiliate them with the whole world watching, which is what he did. The days of American decline are behind us. We're now going to enter a golden age. That is saying, he's just tearing them to shreds right there. It was not a Lincolnian, that is Lincoln-esque, inaugural speech. You remember Lincoln's second, it might have been more like Lincoln's first inaugural, like at the outset of the Civil War, but it certainly wasn't, the soaring inaugural that everybody remembers, the best one ever given, the malice toward none, charity for all. That's not what it was. But I do think that Trump was more focused, he was more precise, it was the most articulate speech I personally have ever heard Trump give. Now, I know he's given a lot, and maybe there have been others, but there was no riffing. There was no going off on a tangent. He stuck to the script. And the script was very straightforward, blunt, direct, and I think memorable. I think he gave the most memorable speech of his political career. And one of the reasons it's going to be memorable is because it was indoors. My favorite moments from the whole thing, how about this line? This line, I think, was a throwaway line for some people. It ticked off Lisa Murkowski from Alaska or whatever, but he said, "We will restore the name of a great president, William McKinley, to Mount McKinley, where it should be and where it belongs." Okay, I'm going to be honest. I will always call it Mount McKinley because that's what I was raised understanding that it was. I know that the people there, I'm not sure they ever stopped calling it Denali. I don't know. I don't know how Alaskans feel about the whole thing. I haven't done a poll, none of that stuff. I would always call it Mount McKinley because that's what I understood it to be. Whether or not it officially gets changed on a map, I'm not really that concerned about. That was the line that I wasn't that enamored by. It was the next line where he said, President McKinley made our country very rich through tariffs and through talent. He was a natural businessman, and this is the key, gave Teddy Roosevelt the money for many of the great things that he did. I about came out of my seat. Because every time I'm asked to put together a list of great presidents, William McKinley is towards the top. I think that William McKinley is one of the most underrated presidents in American history. Turn of the century guy, American imperialism to a greater degree than we had seen before. You've got the Spanish-American War that is done very successfully for the United States. We gain Cuba as a protectorate. We gain Puerto Rico. Then on the other side, we gain the Philippines. We gain Hawaii as a territory. I mean, the open door policy with China. I mean, McKinley was a very effective president. I think he was a good president. And here's what always miffs me. Teddy Roosevelt is on Mount Rushmore. And Teddy Roosevelt is on Mount Rushmore because, number one, he was charismatic, and number two, he does a bunch of stuff. His charisma, and he does a bunch of stuff. He makes a bunch of national parks. He initiates the progressive movement. Teddy wasn't really a Republican. He certainly wasn't conservative. He was a progressive, the father of the progressive movement. I'm not a big fan of progressivism. Some of the stuff that Teddy does, whatever. But by and large, McKinley, in my estimation, is the far greater president. And that Teddy Roosevelt, he rides into power simply because McKinley was assassinated by a lunatic. And then Teddy Roosevelt gets all of the accolades. I think Teddy Roosevelt is as overrated as McKinley is underrated. And I think it's a travesty that the better president is forgotten. And so I loved it. I loved it that Donald Trump, of all people, points out Bill McKinley deserves a little bit of respect. If that means naming a mountain after him, by golly, we're going to do it. How about this line? This is just pure common sense. Where he says, we have a government that is given unlimited funding to the defense of foreign borders, but refuses to defend American borders, or more importantly, its own people. Now, I want you to, this is incredibly obvious, and it's incomprehensible. It is incredibly frustrating, and finally, it's being acknowledged. I think that line itself deserved 100 standing ovations. There is nothing racist. There's nothing wrong about wanting a secure or a strong border, and every single person knows it. Because the people that will tell you that it is racist and wrong are the same people that are completely fine and think it's completely legitimate that we have been sending billions of dollars to Ukraine to do what? To defend its proper border with Russia. Russia has crossed the border. It is invading another country, and we say that's not right. That is a sovereign nation, and it needs to be able to defend itself against Russian aggression. Okay, is that racist to tell the Russians to stay out? No, it's a sovereign country, and it needs borders. We have been giving unlimited funding to defend a border of another country and not our own. That is simply an inarguable, obvious fact. I loved it. How about this? When he says he's going to begin a revolution of common sense, I'm going to tell you something right now. I'm going to adopt for the Trump presidency the same approach that I had with the first Trump presidency. When he does good things, I'm going to praise those good things. And when he does boneheaded things, I'm going to criticize those boneheaded things. That should be our policy regardless of who is in office. And I noticed that everybody in the Trump crowd was on board with that when I would criticize Joe Biden. But suddenly, when you criticize Donald Trump for waffling on pro-life stuff, then all of a sudden it becomes a big deal. Oh, you can't do that. We got to circle the wagons. The Democrats never turn on themselves. No, listen, I'm going to say what is right and what is wrong. And that's why I'm saying, if common sense becomes the theme, becomes the intent, becomes the direction of this administration, I will be its biggest cheerleader. And he started rattling off some things that are common sense, ending the Green New Deal. I loved that its architect, Barack Obama, is sitting right there hearing that, because the amount of tax money that has been wasted on that scam, it's jaw-dropping, and it cannot end soon enough. The executive order to stop government censorship. Yes. The very thing that progressives accuse Trump of doing, or of wanting to do, use the government to silence dissent. You know, the whole Trump is a fascist thing? Okay, he never used or wielded the power of government to silence dissent. He had nothing but dissent for 4 years. But what we have seen for the last 4 years is the government attempting to silence citizens, jailing pro-lifers, which, by the way, Trump still needs to execute those pardons, and the list goes on. So, yes, ending government censorship, great move, common sense. A national emergency at the southern border, absolutely common sense. The official policy of the United States government that there are only 2 genders, male and female, absolutely common sense. And I wonder, is it possible for a statement of such pure common sense to be at once refreshing and alarming? Refreshing that we can now, our national leaders can now say the obvious again, but also alarming that it ever became, that something like that needs to be said in the first place. Imagine going back to 1900 and envisioning what the year 2025 would be like, and what the president in 2025 was going to be proclaiming and envisioning. You'd come up with a lot of stuff. What you would not come up with is the president of the United States saying, and we will again begin to recognize that there are only 2 genders, male and female. You're going to wonder, what in the world happened? Right. That's what I'm saying, common sense. I love that he mentioned Mars, and I know that other people may see the Mars thing as a waste of resources, and I couldn't disagree more, and Trump told you exactly why. My reasoning why, when he said ambition is the lifeblood of a great nation. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And if America is once again the place where ambition is courted and dreams are incited and encouraged and innovation is promoted and creation and creativity is encouraged rather than stifled, yes, we got a great era in front of us if that happens. Now, a lot remains to be seen, because there is a heavy-handed bureaucracy that stifles creativity and innovation, and government does all it can to just take a big hefty dump all over the creativity and the ingenuity of the American people. And one of the things that was great about the Reagan Revolution was getting the government off of our backs as much as possible. But that's where you see innovation take place. It is no surprise that the great era of invention and industrialization that happened, you're speaking of William McKinley, at the end of the 1800s, when we had adopted a laissez-faire approach to government. Laissez-faire means hands off, get the government out. And all of that ceased largely with the birth of the progressive movement. Not entirely, of course, but it became more hampered. Last thing that I would say about the inaugural speech, my favorite part, and I've saved it. My favorite part was this line right here. This one, Trump speaking doesn't move me. Like, there are speakers who you just and I think to a certain degree Barack Obama at times had that ability. Ronald Reagan had that ability. How about this? I could never get it from Obama. But I got it from Bill Clinton. I didn't like Bill Clinton. He wasn't my favorite president. But you listen to some of his speeches now. Yeah, I mean, the guy's got it. Had it, anyway. Reagan had it. I don't think Trump's got it. But this line itself is incredibly moving, and I loved that it was in the speech. Listen to this. Americans pushed thousands of miles through a rugged land of untamed wilderness. They crossed deserts. They scaled mountains. They braved untold dangers. They won the Wild West. They ended slavery, rescued millions from tyranny, lifted billions out of poverty, harnessed electricity, split the atom, and launched mankind into the heavens and put the universe of human knowledge into the palm of the human hand. That right there, that is what has made America so great. Tell that story. Remind young people of that. That's who we have been, and that's who we can be. No, I'm not going to say it. If we become unburdened from what has been. No. I don't want to be unburdened from what has been. I want to be inspired by what has been. That's man, that sounds like a good column. Maybe I should write a column about that. Forget being unburdened by what has been. Let's be inspired by what has been. And Trump just laid it out for us. That's the legacy. Those are the people in whose shoes, or footsteps, I should say, we now walk. So let's push it forward instead of resting on our laurels. That's what I mean by get excited about the Mars thing. That's it. Reminding Americans of who we are and what our legacy is and what we still can be. And if that's the kind of greatness that President Trump is wanting to encourage and promote, like there's been this nebulous "Make America Great Again" that's just kind of been this phrase, and I don't know what he's applying it to, and different people will apply it to different things. If that's it, unleashing the individual genius of the American people to a great degree, greater than has been done in a generation, oh, I'm all for that. I'm all for making America great like that again. Yeah, sign me up. And I hope it spreads through the nation's conscience like wildfire. We'll see if it's just words or if that's the direction we go. But those are my thoughts on the inaugural. You can let me know yours. Peter at peterheck.com. That is Peter at peterheck.com. Those of you who are paid subscribers, hang tight, because President Trump and Vice President Vance got a stern talking to by a woke priestess at the National Prayer, I don't know, what was it? The National Prayer Meeting or whatever. They wandered into the wrong Presbyterian church and they got an earful. And it's very interesting, the individual that gave this talk and some of the things that were said. I'm going to go into that. We're going to kind of take a scalpel to that in the after hours section and look at it through a Christian lens a little bit, and also the lens of common sense, which I think those two go hand in hand. We'll do that, and I'll answer the Friday 5, all of that in the after hours section coming up. For those of you who are paid subscribers, those of you who are free, you can do it. You click in the email that I send in our Substack or go to peterheck.com. You sign up right there, and you can do it. I'd love to have you part of that community. But we'll do that coming up in just a couple minutes for paid subscribers. Free subscribers, I'll see you next week for another HECKPHIRE. Bye-bye. The HECKPHIRE only burns because of loyal friends and supporters of this ministry. All of these are people and groups that I know personally and trust implicitly. I can't say enough good things about my friend Jonathan at Hartman Family Farms, about my bank, First Farmers Bank and Trust, my lawn care team at True Land Equipment, my insurance company at Norris Insurance, the place where I buy and lease all of my vehicles, McGonigal GM Buick, and main attraction hair, nobody else touches this head, Stevens Machine, my mechanic at Terrell's Auto Service, my longtime realtor, the Wyman Group, and certainly so much can be said for those fighting for family values in the public square, like the Indiana Family Institute and Indiana Right to Life. Please support them all and thank them.